Hey, converted man here. This is CARM Harm 2.0 final presentation of Doom. I've got MicLaclan, whose name I can't pronounce, with me, and now I don't need to show that screenshot to everyone anymore. How's it going, MicLaclan?
It's going okay.
Alright, let's stop that screen share. Oh, it's back to me. Oh, there's my ugly face with my lobster. Alright, so CARM Harm 2.0, dealing with Matt Slick's section under his secular movements, homosexuality. Is homosexuality a secular movement?
Actually, it isn't, because it encompasses both people who are secular and people who are religious. In fact, there are many religious groups out there who are very supportive of the LGBTQIA plus community, as it's now called. And in fact, just in the Rogue Valley where I live, there's at least 6 churches that attend the Pride rallies, showing their support for people who are of the LGBTQ lifestyle.
Of course, Matt Slick might say something to the effect of, those aren't really Christians.
Well, there's Christians, Mormons, Muslims.
Right, but
Christians,
he only cares about the Christians, and the real Christians are the ones that make fun of homosexuality. Everyone else is fake, right? I mean, I've gotten that from reading his stuff. I don't know if you also drew that conclusion.
Yeah, the lovely no true Scotsman fallacy.
He's admitted on air in other hangouts with people that he has no problem saying that there's a one true Christian, and he knows what that is because he's studied so long. And of course, the problem, there's multiple problems with it, right? Yeah, multiple problems with that. If you studied one more year than he did, then are you now the expert of what it is to be a true Christian? You know, so. But Matt Slick gets a lot of things wrong. A lot of the definitions wrong. I think he cited one definition. Am I right?
I believe he cited one, and the others changed depending on the paper that he was writing.
Right. He actually cited one definition, and then it's like even the definitions that he, I guess, created out of thin air. I mean, that's the only thing I have to go on because he doesn't link us to any dictionaries or anything. He'll change his own definitions in different articles. I've seen that with the atheist pages. I don't know if he did that with the homosexuality pages, but I'm pretty sure he did.
Yeah, he did on quite a few of the ones where he actually wrote out the definitions on that page that I had to go through and explain, no, this is what this is what this is incorrect type thing. And then even in his paper, he doesn't go off of the definition that he cited in his links.
In his own...
Yeah, his own glossary.
His own thing. What do you...
The lobster is attacking us.
The lobster is attacking me. I'm sorry. Okay, so this all boils down to a couple... Well, there's a number of logical fallacies, which I covered a few of them, but I don't know if I counted... I don't think I counted them up. But a couple things come to mind is equivocation and straw manning, poisoning of the well, but also this idea that the Bible says homosexuality is a sin. Well, certainly certain English versions, maybe all English versions, say homosexuality. I'm not sure. But earlier version of the Bible didn't use the word homosexuality. He even talked about that. Do you remember? You covered that. Do you remember what that was?
The Bibles after 1946 started using the term homosexual in place of things like sodomite, which meant somebody from Sodom, or it was placed in there through transliteration. They basically went, oh, I think this fits here, let's stick it here. And generally it was a term for something entirely different, like, as I said, sodomite, which has nothing to do with homosexuality. It's somebody from Sodom.
So in that article, he basically just shrugs it off like it didn't matter. But I mean, if you actually care about the history of your own religion, I think that that would matter very much.
Hmm.
So
It
is this just an appeal to tradition? Well, this is the way we've been doing it. I mean, what's going on there?
I'd say it's not quite an appeal to it's an appeal to certain types of tradition, but if you actually go for um like I prefer the Young's literal translation because it is literally he just translated it pretty much word for word and then tried to fix the sentence structure. And so some sentences will actually read like Yoda does, which is kind of fun. But you'll also look at like the Jewish Bibles, and they've translated them over into English, and they say something entirely different than what is being said in like the King James version or any of the Bibles after 1946, which I think are the Revised Standard, the NIV, the English Standard, and things like that. And to my knowledge, most of those were written in the US of all and US of A instead of worldwide.
Yeah, I recall my conversation was like one of the questions I asked him was, "What's the best version of the Bible?" And he said, "Any of them." What would you, as a theologian, because you are actually you have a degree in theology,
Mm-hmm.
so what would your answer be to what's the best version of the Bible available?
Um, that are readily available.
No, I
There
mean at
isn't,
all.
yeah, at all. I would say either Young's or the Jewish version, the Jewish Bible that I cite in a lot of the videos, that does offer translations for words that don't really translate across. So it'll say what the word is up top, and then it'll explain what it is in English, even though there's not a adequate word to translate across.
So, what would it be a facepalm moment when Matt Slick said, you know, any version's fine?
Yeah, because from one Bible to the next, there are massive differences. The King James is the only Bible that actually cites unicorns.
Now that's the worst, I think. Isn't that across the board, scholarly wise, the worst one?
It's, I wouldn't say it's the worst one, it's the most used and the most abused at the same time. In the I noticed in seminary.
um, is this sort of the religion being used as a shield to hide bigotry, or is this? I think that the religion says this, therefore I'm going to be bigoted. Which is it? I mean, obviously we can't use logic to deduce, but we can guess.
I'd say it's a little of both. One of the big things that I've noticed is people who were very indoctrinated into the religion who haven't questioned it believe wholeheartedly this is why I have to believe this way because I've been told that. And then there are other people who go, well, this portion of the Bible that I will follow while I toss out this allows me to hate against something I don't like. And so they'll use it to back up their own bigotry.
Yeah, the I mean, now we have these religious protection laws, and now businesses don't have to serve gays, homosexuals. So we're like going backwards in time, where we had signs whites only. Now we're gonna have signs that say heteros only or something. And I think at least for the one gal that this interviewer talked to, her prejudice was on display because he said, "Well, what about?" Somebody that stole or somebody that committed adultery, if you knew that they did that, would you still give them flowers? And they were like, yes. Like, okay, why that and not homosexuality? And they said, because homosexuality is a different type of sin, which I was like, no. You clearly haven't read your Bible. And in God's eyes, all sins are equal. So you are obviously bigoted towards this, and that's what this really is about, at least for that particular person. I think that was a reasonable conclusion. With Slick, it's harder to figure out because every article is just so wrong. It does seem like it's doctrinology, that this is his doctrine that he wants to promote, and thus he can't be wrong about it.
Well, it's kind of like a lot of the arguments for the business owners is like, if I bake a cake for a gay couple, I'm taking part in their wedding. I'm in that wedding. And somebody had brought up in a conversation in my philosophy class, well, does that make a Christian gun store owner who sells a gun to somebody who goes out and murders, does that make them an accomplice to the murder because they sold the gun?
Right, yeah. I mean, and I think that this has other implications. As a doctor, all of a sudden be like, yeah, I'm not going to operate on this person because they're an atheist and they don't believe in an afterlife, so I might as well let them die, you know. Or on the flip side, well, they're a Christian, so they want to go to heaven, so I won't operate. You know, you know. So it has far-reaching implications that I don't think people are really thinking about. Obviously, it's going to be overturned. It's ridiculous. But going back to the Bible, because that is the source of the problem and also the potential source of a solution, if we actually look at what these verses say, not the way we've gotten used to them in our culture, but what they really say, is there anything about what we call homosexuality in the Bible?
Not that I'm really able to find. I mean, a lot of the things that they cite, one of the big ones is, and this one is actually cited in the woman who is suing all gay people. She cites that one.
That's just classic. I love
Yeah.
that story. It's sorry.
She cites, and Slick also cites Romans 1:26 through 28, which talks about how God gave them up to dishonorable passions. Men began sleeping with men, women began sleeping with women. They went against their natural ways. And if you read the entire section, it's God's basically saying, you're naturally straight, but I'm going to make you do something that you aren't. So in the same way, if the person that he changed was naturally homosexual, then suddenly they're straight, because to them, that's not what they are. He forced them to be who they aren't.
So it's a punishment. It's not saying that being that way is bad. It's saying I'm doing this to punish you. Like, they're aware that up until this moment I've always liked women, but now all of a sudden I like guys. Oh man, this is horrible. And it's a punishment that they're aware of then.
Basically, it actually says in there, since they did not see fit to acknowledge God, God gave them up to a debased mind to do what ought not to be done, which is the section that most people cite. And it's basically, I'm not acknowledging you, so God goes, oh, well, I'm going to mess you up, and I'm going to make you do stuff that you think is wrong and you don't like.
Yeah, so it does sound like a punishment that they would be aware of, rather than, it's not God saying this is bad. It's God saying you're going to do the opposite of what you want to do. Am I getting?
Yeah.
Okay.
And another thing is, the Bible doesn't discuss it when they talk about any of the forms of homosexual acts. They're not talking about a loving relationship or a committed relationship. The Sodom and Gomorrah story, when they talk about the mob saying, bring out the guests so we might know them, was actually about dominance and violating the hospitality of the guests. It had nothing to do with, oh, I love this person, I'm having sex with them. It's, I'm going to dominate you, I'm going to humiliate you, I'm going to treat you badly.
Now, with that particular story, how do we square that he offers the daughter up? How is that? How is that okay?
It was considered okay because they were property, for one, and also it was more acceptable to offer somebody who was part of the city or the tribe than to violate the hospitality that he is imparting upon the guests, the angels. So it's better to it sounds horrible. It's better to rape and violate a member of the town than it is to rape and violate a guest of the city or town, according to
It's
their laws.
yeah, it's certainly not morals or ethics that we have today, but judging by the biblical's text's own standards, as if it was history, which I'm skeptical that that event actually happened, but who knows? That it would, for them, be the right thing to do, and that the fact that the town wasn't doing the right thing is what caused God to destroy it.
Mm-hmm.
And it had nothing to do with being gay or whatever. That was totally not part of it. It was just the violence. Yeah.
The other thing is angels are supposed to be androgynous without sex, so
they wouldn't have been able to do anything anyways. But
they're technically, even if they did violate them, the angels could have been female, and then it would be heterosexual. There's no way of knowing because we aren't told the sex of the angels. We assume that they're male.
Ah, that's an interesting point. And then so it's a violation of the laws of the land that God's punishing, not this whole idea that it's homosexuality. And then of course I had somebody say to me, well, where do you think we got the word sodomy from?
Yeah, sodomy and sodomite. It's basically we took a word and associated it with something else, which is what we do with English language. Is we go, okay, this is what we believe this means because of how we've been raised and trained. Let's place it on this word, which is
right. Even if it's the origin, that doesn't mean that that's what it's about.
Mm-hmm.
But this person was, of course, really wanting homosexuals to be bad or whatever. Is this just the essence core fear of change? Is that what this all is about ultimately?
I think currently it's a fear of change. Back in the biblical times, it did make sense to not look down upon, but kind of push the homosexual relationships, actual relationships, to the side, because infant mortality was really high. It was hard you basically wanted to expand the population, and you can't expand the population if it's two people of the same sex getting together. So it was a social reason instead of a moral reason, as most people try to argue.
You wanted to talk about the morality. This is wrong. This is absolutely wrong. God condemns this. Obviously, when we look at the actual words, we can't find any support for that. So, homosexuality isn't a sin?
Essentially, it's not, from taking a look at the verses. I mean, there's actually a sin that's even bigger, which is being left-handed.
Oh. Well, screw left-handed people. They're only like 3% of the population, whatever.
Yeah. But some of the verses that are used, as I said, the Romans 1:26, it describes a group of heterosexuals who are forced to go against their basic nature. And another person states that it's to engage in same-sex behavior during ritual orgies. Genesis 19, the typical interpretation is that it condemns all same-sex sexual behavior within a loving, committed relationship or a one-night stand. But the interpretation that I had learned, and that is cited by several religious progressives and secularists and even scholars, is that it condemns anal raping of strangers for the purpose of humiliation. That's the Lot in the story of Sodom.
Okay, to play devil's advocate, if I will, if you're not married, that's adultery, which is a sin. So since a gay person can't be married, then you're committing sin.
Well, it's not adultery. You'd have to be, for it to be adultery, the person would have to be married and having sex with somebody who's not married.
Well, is it a sin to have sex when you're not married?
It depends on what part of the Bible you look at. And if you're If you're a woman, yes. Period. End of story.
Oh, okay. But
If
if
you're
you're
a
a man,
man,
it's fine.
it's kind of
Yeah,
depends
that's
on
kind
where
of
you
the
live.
male patriarchy that we find in the Bible, is that the man can get away with a lot of things, and the
Mhm.
woman is basically property. I mean, if you rape a woman, you can pay the father, and now it's okay.
It depends. It actually depends on if she screamed, if it was in the country, if it was in a city, was she engaged? If she was engaged to be married and she's raped, she's dead.
But
If it
that's
was in
not
the
her fault.
country,
It's the guy.
yeah. But yeah, there's this whole list of laws for that one that I don't even want to go into because they're
Right.
absolutely batshit. Um,
But
but
what I was trying to get at is, if we can't really say for sure if being married, having sex before marriage or without being married is a sin, if that's not clear, no matter what we do with the text of the Bible, or even if we wanted to make the argument
mhm,
that you have to be married in order for sex to be cool in God's eyes, then shouldn't Christians be promoting gay marriage?
yeah, I if marriage is a requirement to have sex, which a lot of Christians go for, then they should be promoting let's let them get married, and therefore they're no longer living in sin. But one thing that was pointed out to me, I think within my first year of seminary, was Adam and Eve were never married. It never says in the Bible that they were married.
Well,
So
they were married by God or something. I mean,
that's an apologetic that's argued later.
well,
It's
yeah,
not actually said in the Bible.
you gotta. It's somewhere in CARM's site, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go with the old golden oldie. It wasn't Adam and Steve. Is there a response to that other than just face palming?
Um, well, one is that if we took the rib directly from Adam, even though that's a whole nother argument as the translation of rib, but if it was taken from Adam, Eve would have been a man because it is male genetics that you're taking from to create another person.
So it was Adam and Steve.
Yeah. But God did some stuff and made a woman.
Yeah. So just so that
But
the biology could happen,
yeah.
I guess, right?
But if you actually look at the meaning of the word rib, what we use now is the rib bone, but the older translations actually mean took half of Adam to create the other person. It's Adam's side, basically. And
Huh.
that's why the partner is supposed to be at the side, not behind, not in front.
Interesting. Interesting. Uh, so if I've got all this right, there's really nothing against homosexuality in the Bible. Uh, Being married may or may not be a prerequisite, but if it is a prerequisite to having sex, then really Christians should be for gay marriage, but they're not because they're reading the English translations that say homosexuality. So, whose fault is it ultimately that put homosexuality in there instead of leaving it what it was?
People who were against homosexuality. That's basically the only answer I can give because there's no mention of loving, committed relationships involving homosexuality in the Bible. There's uh, basically people can guess at Jonathan and David because of the phrases that are used, but at the same time, there's no actual loving relationships. It's either temple orgies, it's dominance, going against things that they are, raping male children, which is an interesting one. Um,
Was that okay or not okay?
it's not okay.
Okay. Was that stonable to death then?
It was, I believe, stonable to death.
Okay, good. As long as it was stonable to death, I'm fine with it.
Yeah. Even the one that's in Leviticus, the Leviticus 18:22 is the temple one. But if you actually read Leviticus 20 and you read it through, it actually describes all these things like don't have sex with your mother, don't have sex with your sister, don't have sex with your aunt. It's like talking about
What?
not having sex with close blood relations.
Well, that's kind of a
Yeah.
okay. Well, okay, but now you could go the other way and say, okay, well, my last line of defense as the devil's advocate is going to say, well, Jesus and Yahweh, neither of them ever said anything that it was okay to do this.
But he never said anything condemning it. There is
Well,
absolutely nothing that Jesus said condemning homosexuality. He condemns adultery several times and he condemns several other things, but he does not condemn a loving homosexual relationship.
but he doesn't endorse it, so is this really? This is, of course, the really weak leg to stand on. He doesn't endorse it. I'm losing ground.
It's basically arguing from a mission, if I remember correctly. It's
Yeah.
saying, well, he didn't say it.
He didn't say anything about microwaves, so we can't use microwaves. I mean,
Yeah.
Now going into if let's go, of course, into things that aren't mentioned. Hermaphrodites aren't mentioned, and transgender isn't mentioned at all. Either they weren't aware of these things, or these things weren't. I don't know. It is rare to be intersex. Well, it's not called hermaphrodites; it's called an intersex now. But these things weren't widespread, so
Hermaphrodites were known about. There's not really any mentions in the Bible. There's mentions in like Greek culture, Roman culture, and all these other places that were happening around, but not really mentioned in the Bible. And the closest thing to transgender that's mentioned is that it's bad to be an effeminate male. So if you're overly feminine, but again, it's stating that you're male the whole time.
But why is that? Why would even that be a thing in the first place? Is there a justification for that? It's just one of those
Masculinity.
Don't eat shellfish sort of things.
Well, the shellfish actually makes sense because of their bottom feeders and they eat refuse.
Don't eat me.
Yeah, don't eat the. No, I swell up, I die. But with the effeminate thing, if you were effeminate, you were basically being like a woman, so you weren't a man, and so it was a masculinity thing.
Okay, but if you obviously now if you had identified as a woman, said, "Look, I know I'm in a male body, but I'm really a woman," then can I be effeminate?
That doesn't show up in the Bible.
I know that doesn't show up in the Bible. Does it?
Yeah.
Earlier writings around the same time. I don't know how familiar you are with that. Is anyone okay with that? Does that happen? Is that mentioned?
In other cultures, it is, but it's not in the Bible, or
it's just something that the Jewish people didn't deal with then.
Yeah, it was pretty much be a man.
or be a woman, I guess. Now, obviously, to get into a little bit of personal space, you appear to be physically a woman. However, you think of yourself as a man, and as such, we call you he. And call you a male name, Mike or Mick or whatever name I can't pronounce. So I've been wired, I suppose, to think of gender as a binary thing, and I suppose that's true for many of us. So it is difficult in my brain somewhere to say he whenever I think about you. What's wrong with me?
Well, it's not actually anything wrong. It's that what it is we're trained that sex, which is generally viewed as the physical form or the genetic chromosomes X and Y, and gender, we're basically taught to interuse them when we're younger. But we are learning now that sex and gender are two entirely different things. And while you can physically have your sex be something, your gender is basically what's in your mind. It's what you are personally. And we're discovering it's more than just male or female. There's this whole spectrum for gender. while sex is still limited to a very small amount of basically male, female, or both.
Yeah, now that the technology is getting better for to be able to have a gender change, but it's still a very costly, lengthy process. So this whole argument that's put forth of you just want to be you know whatever it is. There's different arguments put forth, usually against regarding homosexuality. You just want to be gay, but for transgender people, is there an argument put forth? Well, you just aren't happy with your body the way it is, so that's why you want to become a man or a woman or whatever. But it's just so much work and effort, and it's a really long process and expensive as well. So this argument just seems to me to fall flat on its face. But what more do you want to negate as far as that sort of argument goes?
The most common arguments that I've heard is basically for a transgender woman who was born physically male and is transitioning to being physically female, is that they couldn't cut it as a man, that they couldn't be man enough, so they're giving up and becoming a woman. And with women, a transgender man who was physically born a female and is transitioning to a male like myself, it's that we envy being a guy. We want to be that man. And it's like, we don't want to be that. We are that. We've always been that.
Would Freud say that that's penis envy?
Yes.
Now, I didn't Freud started a lot of stuff, but I don't like a lot of Freud. Do you find the same sort of annoyance with Freud as I do? I know that's off topic, but
Freud was an ass. That's all I have to say.
I think he was a little bit crazy. But okay, anyways, this is off topic. Going back to Matt Slick's page after page, article after article, why in the world wouldn't Slick have somebody who is a Christian and transgender or homosexual or what have you write these articles? That would, to me, make sense, and you would get better direct information. And my only guess is he just really wants this to be a sin, so he can't have anybody that doesn't agree with him write these articles.
It doesn't fit his belief.
Doesn't fit his belief, even though, and his belief he is based on this particular doctrine, these particular words in English that he knows have been changed. He knows that this is not the way it's always been.
Mm-hmm.
So what happened there? Why? I mean, obviously we're trying to go to the motive of a guy. We can't really get there, but what is it? Is it some sort of ingrained biological thing that we have as humans? We're afraid of differences, and because a few versions of the Bible said homosexuality, he can latch on to that to enable his, for lack of a better word, bigotry. I'm just speculating here, but
I think it's not a biological, I think it's more of a sociological and a cultural thing, that during the time that he was being raised, homosexuality was very much looked down on. It was considered culturally a very bad thing. And so that's what he was raised with. With me, I grew up during the 80s and the 90s, during the time when homosexuality was becoming more out in the open and more accepted. So people of my generation see it as more acceptable, whereas people of like my grandparents' generation from the 20s, 30s, you didn't talk about it. But it was also the same way with mental health. You didn't talk about it. It didn't exist. If somebody had a mental health issue, they disappeared. And it's the same basically with homosexuality.
right. And I think the latest poll, I don't know if it was a Gallup poll, but I did see a poll. It was like now 51% of Americans are pro homosexual, whereas before it was the other way around. So it does seem that more people are coming out of the closet. More people are learning that they know somebody that's this way, and that's making them realize that this they're choosing love over bigotry by and large, which is great. Uh, there's still a lot of battles to win, and a lot of prejudices to overcome. Have you been the victim of prejudices yourself?
Not for being homosexual, because I'm still looked at as a female and I'm married to a male. So they're like, oh, you're just this, you're normal, you're straight. But being transgender, I have actually been the victim of several things that aren't the nicest. I've had people say things. I think the one that amuses me the most is, well, that's a long way to go just to get some dick. Like, because I came out as gay, and they're like, oh, well, you came out as gay and you're going to get a sex change just so you can get a dick? Just show your tits to people and you'll get dick. And I'm like, but that's not working. That's not the thing. And I've had people tell me that I am a traitor to my sex. I deserve death. I mean, I've been told several things that are just very nasty.
Wow,
And
that's
it's like,
that's almost as bad as some of the things we get as atheists too, but
Mhm.
it almost at a different level because um you know somebody that really believes and cares about an entity like God, and somebody going, oh no, you're wrong. I can see how that could cause a lot of things, but when it's gender, it's like, who cares? It's your body, it's not me. You're not making me go through a sex change. Why should I care what you're doing?
yeah. And also, because I identify as male, one thing that's been happening a lot is a lot of my experiences from when I identified as female are being considered invalid because I'm a male.
Hmm.
I've actually, because when I'm online, I identify as male and I discuss um, pro choice and pro life stuff. And they're saying, well, how can you do that? Did you magically grow a uterus? And it's like, no, I've had children. I've had children. I've had an abortion. I know about this stuff. And
You
then they
can't
say
be
that
a
I'm
feminist
lying.
now because you're a guy.
Oh, God, I get that one all the time.
Okay, uh, so Matt Slick, I think we're pretty much in agreement, but it's just because we're reprobates and want to sin or whatever, I guess. But everything that he has said on this homosexuality article after article, is there anything he got right? That I can't think of anything. So
He got a few definitions right.
a few definitions right. I'll give him. Well, he cited one, so I'll give him one definition he got right. The rest I would have to be skeptical.
One of the big things is that he goes not looking at it from a logical standpoint or a sociological standpoint or a cultural standpoint. He looks at it and tries to place morality on it. And so then he goes, well, if it's okay to be this, then obviously it's okay. And he uses that whole lovely slippery slope
Yeah, the slippery
fallacy.
slope, right? Yeah, if it's well, animals are also homosexual, but animals also commit rape, so therefore we should be able to commit rape.
Yeah, it's
Uh,
although it's the usual arguments that I've seen a lot of creationists make and a lot of very diehard Christians make against secularism, atheism, whatever you want to call it. And it's just been transposed onto homosexuality.
by and large, the atheist, skeptical, secular community seems to be in favor of LGBT rights, um, feminism, all sorts of equality issues. I certainly am. I consider myself a peopleist. I want equality across the board.
Mhm.
Probably not going to happen within my lifetime. Also, I made up the word peopleist because I do that. Humanist, peopleist, whatever. But yet, there's long strives to make to that progress, and one could say fairly that religion or some of the religious are holding us back from that progress. Uh, what can we do to change that?
Just continue doing what we're doing, basically. drawing attention to it, educating people, and not giving in. I'm not like going up and going, you must accept gay people. Ah. But
No, that's
just
what I'm doing.
yeah, but just show people the truth. Basically, hold up a mirror to society, as Aldous Huxley in, I believe it's Aldous Huxley. No, Ray Bradbury. Sorry, got Fahrenheit 451 and Brave New World mixed up. Yeah, there we go. But hold up a mirror to society. Show them what society is, and show them what they are a part of. Essentially, we're not saying you have to be gay if you accept homosexuality. We're saying some people are gay, some people aren't. They're no different than you, except what they do in the bedroom, which you shouldn't care about.
Yeah, it's not you, and also I think the bisexual thing. I've heard the only negative thing I ever heard for that was you're just greedy.
I've been told it's a phase,
It's
because
a phase, right?
I was basically sexually attracted to women for a good chunk of my life. And I've just been leaning closer and closer towards sexual attraction to men. And I was told, oh, it's a phase, you'll grow out of it. And I'm like, no, I'm sexually attracted to them.
Gender isn't this binary thing, and it can change as your brain changes as you get older. It can change with you. Now, I had you watch the movie Normal, and
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was a good movie. You didn't think it was. Do we need more movies like that? Obviously, it wasn't portrayed as well as you thought it could have been, but do we need more mainstream movies that say this is a real thing that really happens and make it something, you know?
I think we need more accurate movies, because a lot of the times when they present somebody who is transgender or transsexual, they do it in a comedic way, or they do it because of a traumatic event, or they come up with this whole story that doesn't really fit in with people who are actually transgender or transsexual. And I think if we showed it more accurately, and not this whole thrill seeking or shock value that we see in movies, it would help a lot, because despite what people want to say, they are influenced by what they watch, even if it's fiction. And
Right. I also remember this movie. I think it was called A Story About Bobby. I misremember now. I'd have to look it up and put it in the description. With this gay boy that eventually commits suicide because his mom won't accept him as being gay. And it was based on a true story. And then the mom becomes an advocate for gays after he's dead. But still, it's like, okay, that sucked, but also okay, we got there was some good from it. It is something that does seem hard for a lot of people to accept, but some people can embrace it. There was that news documentary on a young boy who identified as a girl, and his mother totally embraced it and supported it, whereas his dad kind of was like, "I don't know what to think about this."
mhm.
Um, is it harder for males, or is there a clear gender divide there?
I'm not entirely sure on that
Yeah,
one.
I don't know either. I'm just throwing
I
it out
think
there.
I think with somebody who was physically born male and is transitioned to female, there is a lot of basically the whole, you need to be masculine, you need to be male, you're being feminine, still ingrained in our society. It's old patriarchal values. I'm not saying, oh my God, the patriarchy. It's a patriarchal value that we've kept in our society. And so
Yeah,
them transitioning is a lot more difficult, but at the same time, you've got a large chunk of feminism that is basically pushing, saying these people are transitioning, they deserve rights, they, and even people who are humanist, egalitarian or whatever they associate as, all these people are pushing, saying these people deserve the rights, and they get a lot of limelight, so they are getting a lot more help. Now, one of the things, and I've actually had people say there's no such thing as a transgender male because you don't really see it so much. It's more of, oh, you're just androgynous now. And even being a transgender man, I can only name one transgender male off the top of my head, but I can name several transgender women because they do get a lot more limelight than the transgender men do. And so it's both, each side has a lot of difficulties.
Yeah,
and
and I was
it's different.
with the society. I mean, I was a stay-at-home dad at one point, and that was really frowned upon by my in-laws. It's like, no, you have to work. A man works. A man does this. A man. I'm like, where are you getting this from? According to who? According to what? And it was, a man doesn't have stuffed animals that he takes to bed or whatever, and it's like, why? What? Who says?
I mean, my husband was a stay-at-home dad while I was working because I had a job that paid a lot better and we needed somebody there for our girls. He
Right.
was disabled, so he stayed home instead of trying to go out and find work that wouldn't pay very well while I was making a better job.
Right. But it is there are prejudices gender-wise and a fluid gender like you. I mean, I don't know if that's the right terminology to use. Fluid gender. What would be?
Gender fluid is basically you move back and forth.
Okay, I'm sorry spectrum.
Then. And even people who are transgender, like myself, all have days where I want to go full on pretty princess and dress up in dresses. But then I'll have most of my days where I just want to wear t-shirt, men's pants, men's shoes, and all that stuff and be a guy. So we do have those moments where it switches back and forth. And it's just basically our brain going, hey, I have a desire to do this for the day. Okay, I'm done with it.
Yeah, I dressed up as a woman for a couple different Halloweens, and it was fun. I mean, you know. And I also remember this article. This boy dressed up as Daphne, or however you say her name, from Scooby Doo. Daphne, whatever. And like the parent, she was afraid the kids would tease him. Kids were fine. The kids didn't care. The parents were like, "Why are you letting him do that? What if he's gay? What?" And she was like, "And if he is, so what?" She really took a stand. Like, look, this is Halloween. It's dress-up time. I don't care. And if he turns out to be gay, so what? And she was really, wrote this big blog about it. And, it was the parents who had the prejudice. And the parents can transfer that prejudice to the kids.
Yeah, and that's basically what it is the children don't originally have the prejudice. It has to be instilled upon them and learned. And we do that through society, through movies, through television shows, through how the parents act, how the friends and relatives act. That's how we learn. And so if you grow up in a community or a family that's very specific against or for something, you're more likely to be for or against whatever it was that you were raised to be for or against. And then you go out into the whole world as it is, and you suffer a lot of cognitive dissonance because you're going with what you've been raised to believe versus what you're now seeing.
Yeah, I mean, nations across the world are starting to get marriage between man, woman, as a thing that they're going to vote in. So society, by and large, almost worldwide, obviously there's going to be exceptions, is changing, which is great. I want to talk about two things. You had a lot of facepalm epic just meltdown moments with Matt Slick. Do you
Mhm.
do you want to talk a little bit about what was that? Was that just due to his sheer stupidity? What was going on there?
I
And
think it was a lot of it had to do with the willful ignorance that I
it
was
is. Oh
seeing.
my god, it's so willfully
And
ignorant, isn't it?
also, it was, for me, it was more the repetition of the same thing over and over and over and over again that just got me to go use something new. This doesn't work here. It's not going to work here. You're using something that can easily be disproven. You're using a logical fallacy that does not show real world action. You're trying to equate an apple to an orange, all this stuff that was going on. And I'm going, stop continually using this. You've been given evidence that this isn't true, yet you continue to use it.
It is. It reminds me so much of the the creationists that deny the age of the earth, deny biological evolution. They know they've been given over and over again the evidence. They just deny it, ignore it, shrug it off, whatever. And even when I talked to Matt Slick, uh, and asked him, what do you say the age of the earth is? He said, I'm agnostic in regards to the age of the earth. I've never heard a better non sequitur
Mm-hmm.
ever. I was like, what does that even mean? And then, of course, my follow up was, why not agree with the majority of scientists? Which he said, oh, that's an ad populum. And I'm like, no, no, I didn't ask you to agree with them because. So I had my facepalm
Yeah.
moments as well. Uh, let's finish on. I know you won't talk to Slick, and you've got good reasons to. If Slick happened to see this, what would you want to say to him? And then the last thought, I want you to speak to the transgenders out there or the homosexuals out there that are in the closet. Give them some good motivational words, if you could.
Um, there was one thing that I wanted to mention before we got to that
Okay, yeah,
is with the education portion, we also need to, in popular culture and popular movies, a lot of people are associating cross dressers and drag queens, which drag queens are actually very specific group of people, with transgender women. And they are not the same. And we need to actually educate people, because a cross dresser is somebody who identifies as their own sex, like a cross dressing male identifies as male. He just prefers women's clothing. It has nothing to do with he wants to be a woman. It's I like women's clothing. End of story. And you don't see a lot of female cross dressers because, well, female clothing is a mix of male and female clothing these days. And we kind of need to educate that there are major differences between a transgender person who is basically born into the wrong body and a cross dresser or a drag queen. And drag queens are basically a offshoot, massive offshoot of cross dressing. And they have this whole persona that they take on and this whole being that they are.
Hmm.
So it's, we need to educate in the differences so that we stop mixing the two and basically giving fuel to people who want to use it against others.
All right. Okay, now address. Pretend you're addressing Matt Slick. Say whatever you want. Go on. You can swear. I don't care. Whatever.
My biggest issue with the section isn't that it's based on biblical belief or a person's belief, but it's using arguments that have been disproven time and time again. If a person has sex with somebody of the same sex, they're not more likely to become a pedophile. They're not more likely to become somebody who is into sex with animals. If we become okay with legally homosexual marriage, We're not going to suddenly say, okay, pedophilia is okay, okay, bestiality is okay, because with homosexual or same-sex marriages, it's two consenting people of consenting age. Pedophilia, one of those people is unable to consent, and with bestiality, one of those is completely unable to consent, and they are not comparable. And so
Right.
to
There,
continue
it's a red
comparing
herring.
them,
It's
yeah,
different issues. Right.
continuing to compare them is just showing how desperate you are to vilify a loving relationship just because it's different from your beliefs.
Fair enough. I think that I know that Matt Slick wouldn't care, but
Yeah.
it's not really for him. It's for anyone else.
Mhm.
And then this is tough, but do you have some words of encouragement to offer transgender people out there, homosexual people out there, and what would those words be?
With homosexuality, obviously, if it's an unsafe environment to come out, don't sit there and just blast it out unless you feel safe. And safety should be your top priority. But at the same time, don't try and fool yourself and say, I can change myself. I can make myself different. You'll wind up hurting yourself more in the end. And same with being transgender, is if you try and repress it, it's going to come out eventually. It's going to happen. You're going to finally have that moment. It could be within the next few years after you try repressing it. It could be, for me, it was at least 20 years later where it just finally went, I'm not going to be repressed anymore. You have to deal with it. So you need to start accepting who you are. Even if other people don't accept who you are, fuck them. Literally, just they aren't you. And if you can't be happy with who you are, then you need to look and go, why? And for me, I couldn't understand why I couldn't be happy being female. And it was because I had repressed who I was inside. And once I came to terms with that, I have been a lot happier. I've felt a lot better. And you don't have to be vocal about it. You don't have to walk up to people and say, hi, I'm so and so. You can keep that to yourself if you wish. But at the same time, don't be afraid to be vocal about it if that's what you desire.
And know that you're not alone. There are a lot of
Mm-hmm.
there's 800 numbers to call for help. There's different. Of course, if you have access to the internet, there's meetup.com, I believe it is. There's things like that where you can find like-minded people to hang out with or whatever. Obviously, be safe, but you're not alone, and your life and your ideas are valuable, and we want you to continue to exist. We need your ideas, even if it is just going to the library to blog an anonymous blog. You're giving somebody else hope as well, and I think that that's what I would say is you're not alone,
Yeah.
and I
And
accept you as you are, if that means anything. And I don't even know you, but
yeah.
I'll accept you as you are.
Um, one of the things also is there are, especially if you are a transgender youth, there are programs out there, just a simple Google search will find for either transition to help you get the things you need, help you the resources. If you are a transgender male, they will help you get a binder to help bind your chest. If you aren't able to afford it or you're living with a family where you can't get the credit card, they'll help you so that you can feel better. But the biggest thing, and it's something that I wish I could just tell all these people that I've seen in the news lately, these transgender youth that are committing suicide, I wish that I could have told them it does get better. And I didn't believe that for the longest time. And even with the stuff that happens to me, the people who are complete douche canoes to me, who are horrible individuals, I still remind myself there are people who love me. there are people who accept me, and I accept myself, and it will get better.
Absolutely. I mean, I was bullied, and I'm just, I was not, maybe not normal, but maybe not weird. I don't know. But kids get bullied, so and being very different, you might be very bullied, and that's not good. But all these things will pass, and you'll find yourself out of that situation. You take that adversity and turn it into something positive. Don't let them win.
And if it does get too bad, there is now for transgenders, and I believe there's also one for people who are homosexual as well, but there are hotlines available, and these people will sit there and they will talk with you. They will help you. If they can't help you directly, they will point you in the right direction for resources that you need. And it is a long journey to change. For like myself, I haven't even begun hormones. I haven't begun any of the sexual reassignments because of how our society views it. I have to prove. But don't give up. Don't just sit there and go, this is too hard, I'm giving up. Because that's the worst thing to do.
Right. I mean, it's a struggle, but it's your journey, and it's worth fighting for who you really are. So I think, yeah, I and definitely we'll get some links in the bottom for different web pages and things like that. So do we have any empirical evidence that homosexuality or transgender was bad?
No, I haven't found any yet, except
Yeah.
for a couple religious texts which have been taken out of context.
Yeah. So do we have any tests that we could show that any of this was bad?
No, because the definition of bad differs from person to person too.
So do we have a logically coherent argument?
Nope.
Okay, so we don't have empirical evidence, repeatable tests, or a logically coherent argument. And unless and until we do have a logically coherent argument,
We have to stay skeptical.
right, that's not how I normally say it, but
You
whatever, you've ruined it! You've ruined it! Okay, we'll see you next time. Unless until we have lobsters exist. Now we get to be silly for a while. Okay. Thank you for watching. Thank you, MicLaclan, who I mispronounced your name because
it's fun.
It's I'm deconverted man. I get to do that. Thank you all for watching CARM Harm 2.0. The playlist and other information will be in the description. Sub to MicLaclan. Send me money. Send them money. Send us all money. Whatever we need money. Money. Other than that, things will get better. I think we'll end with that.
Yes.